How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the New York Jets franchise on Madden 20. It's time to recap Year 3 and get ready for Season 4 of the series. We did make the playoffs this season, but we all know how that ended, an overtime loss to the Patriots. Let's take a look at some of the other scores from the wild card weekend here. The Bills are also done after losing 27-24 to the Indianapolis Colts. We know how good the Colts are, and Hakiba threw for 3 touchdown passes in the wild card round. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers took care of business against the Atlanta Falcons with a 35-21 victory. Teddy Bridgewater throws for 4 touchdowns in that game. And in the final game of wild card weekend, the Seahawks defeat the Arizona Cardinals 31-14. Russell Wilson throws for 3 scores in that matchup as we simulate through the divisional round in the NFL playoffs. New England survives a late comeback by last year's Super Bowl runners-up, triumphing 35-33 over Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns. Sony Michel goes over 100 yards again as the Patriots advance. Meanwhile, Green Bay beats the Seahawks 28-24. Aaron Rodgers throws 2 interceptions but also throws 2 touchdowns as Russell Wilson is held scoreless. The Indianapolis Colts are also advancing. A 21-14 victory over the Chiefs puts them in the conference championship game. Madison Hakiba throws for 300 yards and 2 scores as he outduels Patrick Mahomes in just his 2nd season. And finally, last year's Super Bowl champions, the New York Giants, fall 31-7 to Will Grier and the Carolina Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater was hurt early on in this one. He will return for the conference championship next week as Carolina advances. In the conference championship, the Patriots destroy the Indianapolis Colts 45-7. They did not let up throughout this game, scoring 14 fourth quarter points with the game essentially out of reach. Cam Newton throws for 3 touchdowns. Madison Hakiba only completes 50% of his passes for 103 yards and a pick in a real clunker for Colts fans. And meanwhile, it'll be Green Bay representing the NFC in the Super Bowl with a 21-24 victory over the Carolina Panthers. Aaron Rodgers is likely to win MVP. He threw for 300 yards and 2 scores. We also get a look at the Pro Bowl rosters. Hakiba makes it in the AFC East. Keenan Culver makes it for the Jets at fullback. Nice to see him getting recognized for his selfless play on the field. That's his 2nd Pro Bowl, actually. I didn't expect him to make it last season, but with the work he put in this year, I'm glad that he's being recognized. Tyree Phillips makes it at right guard for the Jets. So we had 2 offensive players named to the Pro Bowl and only 1 on defense. I expected James Delgado to be named, and he was, but I was surprised that C.J. Mosley or Blasson Austin weren't named to the Pro Bowl as well. We are shut out in the secondary despite having 3 really solid seasons from our cornerbacks. That being said, we did see both Greg Zuerlein and Braden Mann make the Pro Bowl, so props to them for their work this season. Let's take a look at some stats around the league. Aaron Rodgers had a monster season for the Packers. We saw a lot of quarterbacks, including Brett Rypien, throw for over 4,000 yards, but Rodgers, 44 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions. He is far and away the favorite to win the MVP this season. Of course, we didn't get a whole lot of passing production this year, but we weren't first in interceptions. That honor goes to 2nd-year quarterback Sergio Shelton. LaMarcus Albert only threw 10 picks this season, so that's a definite improvement over some years past. That being said, he was sacked 62 times, which was far and away the most in the league. The next was Drew Lock with 44 sacks, so that's definitely something we can improve on. Zeke had another monster year for the Cowboys, almost 1,700 yards. He also added 14 touchdowns on the ground, which is 2nd in the league behind only Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Willie Sparks had a respectable 12 touchdowns, so that's nice to see. Albert leads the league in fumbles, but that's just more of a Madden quarterback thing, as Antonio Kinney broke off the longest run in the league against us, a 98-yard touchdown run. Meanwhile, a couple of Packers receivers had phenomenal seasons. Devin Funchess had 101 catches for over 1,000 yards, and Devontae Adams also had 99 catches for over 1,300 yards this season. They were a devastating 1-2 combination for Aaron Rodgers. Each had over 10 touchdowns. That's got to be some kind of NFL record for receiver production between the top two receivers. Curtis Samuel has the longest reception in the league this season. Left tackle Ezra Cleveland for the Vikings gives up the most sacks, although Freddie Calvin was certainly on pace to give up more than that. He only played in 12 games though, so who knows how that would have ended up. Devondre Campbell leads the league in tackles. Aaron Donald leads the league in tackles for loss with 21. Khalil Mack is first in the league with 15.5 sacks. James Delgado had 13.5, which was good for second. Lasan Austin had 6 interceptions. It's also not listed here, not sure why. Greg Zuerlein led the league in made field goals. He hit 29 of 32 this season. However, he was not the most accurate kicker. That honor goes to Giorgio Tavecchio and Matt Prater. The longest field goal in the league this season was Greg Zuerlein's 61-yarder. And as for punter, the busiest punter this year was Kendall Donnelly. Nice to see it's not Braden Mann, because that certainly was the case a couple of years ago. Trace Way and Brett Kern, each with 74-yard punts to pace the league. Mike McNeil is your most consistently productive kick returner, as there's only a few kick return touchdowns this season. Same on the punt return side of things, only 3 punt return touchdowns on the year. With that, it's time to take a look at the yearly awards. Aaron Rodgers takes home the MVP, surprise to no one with his high level of play this season, while Freddie Kitchens' 13-3 campaign is good enough for Coach of the Year. In the AFC, Baker Mayfield wins Offensive Player of the Year, Chris Board takes home Defensive Player of the Year, and Anthony Bell wins AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. T.H. Butte takes home Defensive Rookie of the Year in the AFC, while Baker Mayfield brings home Best Quarterback. Willie Sparks finished 4th in Best Running Back voting, and T.Y. Hilton wins Best Wide Receiver. That one is a little bit controversial. However, Quentin Nelson winning Best Offensive Lineman is not at all surprising. Josh Allen wins Best Defensive Lineman. That was a little bit of a question mark. James Delgado wins Best Linebacker. So that's the second time he's won that award. Lasan Austin wins Best Defensive Back with a 6 interception season. And Greg Zuerlein, despite his miss in the playoffs, takes home Best Kicker in the AFC. Aaron Rodgers wins Offensive Player of the Year in the NFC. Khalil Mack is the Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year goes to Gilbert Jordan, as the NFC North has a strong showing in the awards category. Dustin Taylor wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. Aaron Rodgers wins Best Quarterback. Zeke wins Best Running Back. CeeDee Lamb, with 16 touchdown catches, wins Best Wide Receiver. David Bakhtiari wins Best Offensive Line. Fletcher Cox wins Best Defensive Lineman, beating out Aaron Donald. I'm not sure I agree with that. Khalil Mack wins Best Linebacker. Sean Murphy-Bunting wins Best Defensive Back, and Giorgio Tavecchio wins Best Kicker. Let's take a look at some team numbers here. The Jets had the league's worst passing offense, thanks in no small part to the sheer number of sacks that LaMarcus Albert absorbed over this season. However, we did have the league's best rushing attack, over 100 yards more than the next closest team, the Dallas Cowboys, which is saying something, which meant that we were top 10 in terms of points per game. We scored 41 offensive touchdowns, just about a 50-50 split. Just 21 passing touchdowns, but 20 touchdowns on the ground. So scoring points hasn't really been a problem for this team, and I like to see that. We're also top 5 in terms of first downs, so we certainly move the ball consistently this season. On defense, we were top 10 again in terms of total yards, but again, it was a tale of two defenses. We gave up the 6th most passing yards in the league, despite having a pretty solid secondary. However, we were the league's best unit against the run, as well as giving up the fewest points in the league, less than 300 points allowed. That forgave a lot of mistakes on the offensive side of things. And we were pretty good at getting after the passer as well. We finished 3rd in the league with 45 sacks, behind just the football team and the Indianapolis Colts. We're also 3rd in the league in terms of fumbles recovered, which is awesome, and tied for 1st in interceptions. So our defense certainly did a good job this season in terms of keeping us in games and keeping opposing teams off the board. In terms of conversions, we are exactly 50% on 3rd down, 4 for 10 on 4th down, and 0 for 1 on 2-point conversions in the regular season. For red zone efficiency, we scored on 92% of our offensive trips. However, we did have to kick 16 field goals in those 50 attempts, which is most in the league. I know we can do better in terms of turning those into touchdowns next season, as the Bears did not kick a single field goal in the red zone. It was touchdown or turnover for them. On the defensive side of the ball, we were phenomenal, hardly giving up any opportunities, and even when a team did get into the red zone, they had a difficult time scoring touchdowns against us. We gave up just 20 touchdowns in the red zone this season, so I'm very happy with those numbers. And although it felt like in games we were less disciplined than the computer teams, we did end up being penalized the least in the league, and it wasn't even close. And we were disciplined in other areas too. We were a +5 in turnover differential this year, which is a marked improvement from previous seasons. We only had 18 giveaways this season, compared to 23 takeaways on defense. This was the first season with LaMarcus Albert as the full-time starter. He threw for 3,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. I know he's still kind of inconsistent, but I love what he brings to the offense. His dual threat ability is his biggest strength. And if we can cut down on the sacks and maybe get him another weapon or two, we could be seeing the beginning of a very dangerous offense. Our running game right now is undoubtedly our strength. We had 3 players go over 500 yards this season. Willie Sparks led the way with 247 carries for 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. It was great to see him take over the starting job with authority this year after we traded away Le'Veon Bell last offseason. On the receiving end of things, Jamison Crowder and Kaderil Hodge had nearly identical seasons. Just 30 yards separate those two. They both had 6 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Brashad Perryman had kind of a rough year. He missed a chunk of games early on with an injury, and then when he did come back, wasn't very consistent. He proved that he could still be a big play threat, but drops were an issue, and he had at least 2 touchdowns that he dropped, and those are opportunities that you just don't get back. Christopher Herndon missed some time, but he's been a very reliable red zone target, and he's going to continue to be our tight end 1. And Steven Sims came in. He was a signing after Perryman and Hilbert went down with injuries, and I don't know if he'll be back next year, but he played well as a wide receiver 3 when we needed him for the first half of the season. One veteran that could probably be on the move is Ryan Griffin. He saw a lot of snaps but did not see a lot of targets, only 7 catches for 98 yards this season. Chris Hogan is also likely to not be on the team next year. He's got an expiring contract. Pass protection was a big issue for us this year. There was a lot of pressure from around the outside. Freddie Calvin gave up 16 sacks in 12 games. Leroy Grant gave up 12 sacks in 16 games. And Tremaine Ankrum gave up 3 sacks in 5 games. So I really want to prioritize left tackle this offseason, and right tackle if I can get one, but for sure get that blind side covered. Benjamin Burks played really well. Mekhi Becton and Tyree Phillips made for a pretty solid interior, especially in the run game. And while Tremaine Ankrum was able to hold down that left tackle spot into the playoffs there, I know we can do better than that. On the defensive side of things, CJ Mosley again leads the team in tackles with 125. We actually have 4 players go over the century mark In tackle, CJ Mosley with 125, Cal Kohler with 110, Marion Marioff and Stephen Donnelly with 104 and 102 total tackles respectively, followed by our three starting cornerbacks, Levi Wallace, Marshawn Lattimore, and Blasan Austin. James Delgado also had a nice season. In terms of tackles for loss, CJ Mosley and Eric Armstead each had 14, James Delgado with 13 tackles for a loss. This is a really solid front seven, and I am pleased with how they are playing. We got after the passer really well this season too. We had two players with over 10 sacks. James Delgado sets a career high with 13.5. Eric Armstead had a monster season with 10.5 sacks. Matt Johnson had 8.5, and Quinion Williams with 5.5. So while Caleb Von Chazen wasn't that good at getting after the quarterback, I'm not worried about our pass rush. Besides, he was backing off into coverage on a lot of plays as well. Blasan Austin led the league and the team with 6 interceptions. Levi Wallace had 4. Marshawn Lattimore had 2. And Marion Marioff had 1 interception this season after recording 3 in the preseason. Hopefully he'll have a better sophomore year. Blasan Austin also had 13 passes defense. He had a really strong season in the slot for us this year, and we have him under contract for another season here. So I'm very excited in seeing what he can do. Also note that Blake Cashman had 7 passes defense in very limited playing time, so he might be headed for a bigger role next year. Cashman was very good against the pass, and I found myself putting him into the games in obvious passing situations in the second half of the season, and he really made a lot of plays. He was flying around the field. We did have 1 kick blocked this season. Quincy Wilson blocked the kick. We forced 1 safety, Mash Johnson, who also scored on a touchdown. We had a whole bunch of defensive touchdowns this year. Wallace and Austin each with 2, Lattimore and Mash Johnson each with 1. Greg Zuerlein was close to automatic this season, his only missed kicks coming in extreme weather games where there was strong wind and swirling rain, so we'll give him a pass on that. He's one of the best kickers in the league, and if it's not too expensive to bring him back, I would like to do so. He's also really good on kickoffs, so that helps. Braden Mann is also a free agent. I'd like to bring him back as well, but he's made 2 Pro Bowls now, which might drive up his asking price beyond what we can comfortably afford for the punting position. So it's possible we try and look for cheaper options at these special teams positions, even though the continuity would be nice. Boston Scott handled kick and punt returns for the Jets this season, and he will continue to do so. He's always a step away, it seems, from breaking one off, as return touchdowns are a lot harder to get in Madden 20 than some previous versions of the game, but he was very solid on both kick and punt returns this season. I should show you guys the schedule here. We started off winning 6 of our first 7 games. Side note on the Saints game, it says I played it 3 times. There's a mistake with the playbooks. Both times I loaded in as I had the wrong one loaded, so I caught it really quickly. Went back to the main menu and then forgot to change it going in the second time, so I ended up playing it on the 3rd time. As we were a little bit streaky towards the end of the season, but was good for a 10-6 record this year. This team is competitive in nearly all of its games, so I hope you guys enjoyed this season as much as I did. It was fun to play. There are a few expired contracts that still need to be renewed. Braden Mann and Greg Zuerlein are the 2 most prominent on this team. Rashad Perryman will probably not get another contract offer. He was just too inconsistent for what I wanted from our deep threats. Fatakasi and Nathan Shepard are also free agents, as the defensive tackle position is up for grabs going into this offseason. Eric Armstead is the starter, but there's room for snaps behind him. I'm looking for a big run stopper that's a little bit cheaper than what they want. Some other notes before we get to the draft class preview. Harry Arrieta's development has been revealed. He's got superstar development, but he's also 25 years old, and in practice and in games, he hasn't shown the consistency needed to supplant LaMarcus Albert as the starter. There's not going to be a quarterback controversy going into year 2. Albert will be the starter. I want to get better at defensive tackle. I mentioned that we need depth, Marlon Davidson is a step in the right direction. I love his flexibility, but I would love a pure run stopper to play the nose tackle position. CJ Mosley might be a cap casualty. He's been the leader of this team for years, and unfortunately he's getting older and also a lot more expensive. He has a monster contract, and we could save $17 million if we cut him. And with Cal Kohler and Blake Cashman playing fairly well, that might be an option we need to take a look at. Blake Cashman doesn't have the run-stopping ability of Mosley or the football instincts, but he does have excellent range, and we've seen his speed make up for mistakes in other areas, most notably pass coverage. So it's possible he will get a chance to start opposite Cal Kohler. Marion Mariev had an underwhelming rookie season given how good his preseason was, but I'm committed to him as a starter going forward. He seemed to be on the opposite end of some big plays from time to time, but he is only 22 years old, so there's lots of room to grow. Same thing with Stephen Donnelly. It felt like his play was defined more by the plays he didn't make than the ones he did, but looking at the numbers, he was actually one of our most productive defenders, both against the run and against the pass. We still might want to bring in some competition for him though, and we could do that in free agency or in the draft. Quarterbacks headline this year's draft class. This is a very unique draft class, as there are half a dozen quarterbacks with first round grades on them. The twins Lawrence and Tuck Fryer, both 20 years old. They went to different colleges and have very different play styles. Lawrence is more of a scrambling quarterback. Tuck has the kind of arm that draws Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen comps. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams in the league right now, and I can't wait to see these rookies take the field because most of them should get the opportunity to start. We don't have a need at quarterback, however, but we would like to bring in some weapons for LaMarcus Albert. Devontae Gary is probably the best wide receiver in this draft class. He's got true deep threat ability, and he's 6'6", so he's going to be a dangerous player. Bart McKee has good size and excellent route running ability. You know he can get open. Gabe Yates has great hands and good route running ability. However, he's only 5'6", and that has him sliding in some mock drafts. Gabe Yates reminds me a lot of Kadero Hodge. He's got excellent hands, but you're not sure how well he can get open. Separation could be a problem for him. And Chris Alfaro, standing 6'8", declared a year earlier than many thought he would. Scouts love his ability to get off the line, but his hands are still a major question mark. There's also depth at tight end. Kadeem Wilkinson is projected to go late in the first round, but some scouts think he could go as early as the top 12 in this draft. He's got a diverse skill set that teams covet. And Sirius Butte also has been shooting up draft boards here. 6'7", 269, with a very impressive skill set. He reminds me a lot of Rob Gronkowski. Left tackle is also very deep. Elijah Cook out of South Carolina could go later in the first round with so many quarterback needy teams in the first half of the draft. One of the most unique players in this draft class is 5'7", Tony Beecham. He lines up on the edge, and while some might say he's too small to play in the NFL, he's got incredible quickness and excellent body control. One of my favorite prospects is Randy Hope, projected to go sometime in the 5th round. He's got excellent size and good block shedding ability. He's just 20 years old. I could see him playing defensive tackle in our scheme. If we decide to draft a middle linebacker, there's some value options, including 22-year-old Brof Ferguson from Kansas State, also Anton Burrell from UCLA. He might be good value in the 3rd round. I think right outside linebacker Bilbo Dawson has the right frame for a 3-4 outside linebacker, but it remains to be seen if his skill set can transition to the NFL. We're good at cornerback, but Renee Dillon is a very unique cornerback, 6'2", 255, projected to go in the 5th round, but he'll likely go sooner. It just remains to be seen if he can stay with NFL receivers. Safety is also very deep in this class. Dominic Ashmore out of Notre Dame is an option. Gerard Thornton from Washington has an excellent skill set that could make him a day one starter. And Khalid Falk could be a good value option late in this draft. But I think my favorite player in this draft class is 6'5", 320-pound punter Brendan McLendon from Minnesota. So don't rule out the Jets taking a punter either, we'll see. So that is it for today's Season 3 recap and off-season preview video. This is what the roster looks like right now. Before we get into the off-season, let me know which areas of the team you think we need to prioritize upgrading in the off-season to make a deeper playoff run next year. My personal top 3 is the offensive line, wide receiver, and tight end. But we could also take a look at drafting or bringing in another middle linebacker and also a safety to push Donnelly and Marriott to play more consistently than they did last season. So thank you all so much for watching. The off-season will be streamed on Sunday, April 11th. That stream will be on YouTube, Football Fan Forever. And I am so excited for the off-season. Have a good one, everybody, and I'll catch you next time.